Del Sol one school that might be of greatest need and might need for you to visit and see firsthand what is happening in our education system. As you can hear outside, today is a day of action, a day of educators around our state and in our nation to come out and support public education and help stop cuts. I respectfully ask, Madam Speaker, that the first roll call be open for co-authors.
Thank you, Mr. Mendoza. I actually introduced this as I thought you had guests on the floor regarding this, but this is a resolution that you just presented on. Why don't we now have the clerk read the resolution?
Assembly concurrent resolution 120 by Assemblymember Mendoza relative to Read Across America Day.
Members, Mr. Mendoza has asked that the first roll be open for co-authors on this resolution. Clerk will open the roll. This is for co-authors, members. First roll is for co-authors. Clerk will close the roll. We have 68 co-authors. Mr. Mendoza?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like to also invite Mr. Speaker and also members of the state legislature who have at one point or another been in front of a classroom and taught a classroom to please join me in the back as we present this resolution to a teacher here in Sacramento, our good friend Toby Boyd. As our members go to the back, I would like to just briefly mention who Toby Boyd is. Toby Boyd has served as a teacher for 16 years in the Elk Grove Unified School District and is serving in his first term on the CTA board. As a teacher, Boyd assisted underrepresented children in the fields of math, science, and engineering in a program called MESA. Boyd also served as a delegate to the California Teachers Association State Council of Education. At the State Council, Boyd served on the Early Education Committee. He also has been appointed chair of the Kindergarten Subcommittee. Another one of his notable achievements has been being appointed by former Assembly Speaker Karen Bass to the California Early Learning Quality Improvement System Advisory Committee. Boyd is a graduate of California State University, Sacramento, and lives in Sacramento with his daughter, Chauncey. Please, members, join me in the back to give our teacher our resolution. Thank you so much, Madam Speaker.
Welcome our visitors in the rear of chambers. And Mr. Mendoza, before you go to the rear chambers, we do need to take a voice vote on the resolution. All those in favor of adopting the resolution signify by aye. Any noes? The ayes have it. The resolution is adopted. Members, I also would like to direct your attention to the gallery where Ms. Harkey has guests today. They are visitors from the Stony Brook School in San Juan Capistrano. Ms. Harkey, would you like to add anything?
Yes, I'd like to thank them very much for traveling all this way. It was great meeting with the group yesterday and today, and hello to you all, San Juan Capistrano. Will the Orange County delegation stand up so they can see who you are? Orange County delegation, Mr. Hagman, stand up so they can see who you are. Thank you. Well, you've got some standing, some in the back, and thank you very much for your trip. I'll see you in the district.
Before we return to 8th Extraordinary Session, our absences for today are the Honorable Danny Gilmore on legislative business and Honorable Amina Carter for illness. We will now return to 8th Extraordinary Session. Members, we are going to move now to Business on our daily file, beginning with Senate third reading. Item 1 is pass and retain. Item 2 through 19 will be pass and retain, but we are prepared to take up Senate Bill File Item 20 by Mr. De La Torre for Senator Steinberg. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 29 with amendments by Assemblymember De La Torre.
And this is for amendments. Mr. De La Torre, you may open on the amendments.
Thank you. SB 29-8X addresses the governor's executive orders which impose 3 furlough days on California state workers. The bill is very similar to my AB 1215 in regular session. These amendments today are technical in nature. I ask for your aye vote, out to print and back on file.
Seeing no discussion or debate on the amendments, members, we may adopt these by voice vote. All those in favor, please signify by aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. The bill is out to print, back to file. We move now to file item 21, to be presented by Mr. Calderon. Mr. Calderon? Mr. Calderon? File item 21, SB number 32 by Senator Wolk. This is again for purposes of amendments. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 32 with amendments by Assemblymember Calderon.
On amendments, you may open, Mr. Calderon.
Yes, Madam Speaker, members, these amendments raise the threshold for when the penalty is applied in this bill. It raises it from $250,000 to $10 million for individuals and $20 million for families filing jointly. I believe.
This is on the amendments. We may do these on. Oh, are you continuing, Mr. Calderon?
Right. Actually, they do. I just saw my notes. They do. They raise the threshold. This is in this bill. There's a penalty for anyone that overstates their refund. And initially, it exempted individuals making $250,000 or less. Now, what this bill will do is it will raise the threshold to $10 million for individual taxpayers and $20 million for taxpayers filing jointly. Ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no discussion or debate on these amendments, we may adopt them by voice vote. All those in favor, please signify by aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. The bill is back to print, back to file. Mr. Torrico.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Under motion resolution, I request unanimous consent to allow Ms. Evans to take up AB 6, AB 9, and AB 14 without reference to file for concurrence in Senate amendments.
Without objection. Members, without reference to file, we will now take up in extraordinary session AB 6. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 6 by the Assembly Committee on Budget and Act relating to taxation to take effect immediately tax levy.
You may open, Ms. Evans.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, AB 6 and 9, which we'll be taking up shortly, are the transportation tax swap bills. We are concurring in Senate amendments. The amendments in the Senate are three basic things. Number one, the original bill that we had passed as one single bill has been bifurcated into two. That's now AB 6 and AB 9. Secondly, in this package, there is no longer any authority for local governments to raise any fees for transit, any local fees for transit. And third, there is no longer a deferral of the net operating loss tax credit in these bills. So that's essentially the amendments that we are concurring in today. The first bill, AB 6, is the first of the two, and this bill addresses the changes to the transportation taxes. It is the one that eliminates the sales tax on gasoline and replaces it with an ongoing excise tax. Consumers will see no change at the pump. Second, it changes the sales tax and the excise tax on diesel, and that creates an ongoing funding source for transit and fully funds intercity rail. So again, what we're attempting to do is provide an ongoing, sustainable, growing source of funding for public transit. Consumers will see no changes at the pump, and this will provide substantial general fund relief. I ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Before I recognize speakers on this, members, it's quite noisy outside, as you may hear. So if I could ask for your special attention to keeping it quiet in the chamber, it would be very helpful. Mr. Nielsen.
Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the Assembly, I would urge a no vote on the proposition before us. Over the years, the legislature, administrations, plural, over the decades, has done a very poor job of keeping its word to local governments. They are the most vulnerable and the most aggrieved by our own budget travails. We're always shifting things their way. In 2002, the people of California said, don't do it anymore, and passed Proposition 42. And it continued to happen, circumventing Prop 42. Then the people passed Proposition 1A, delivering yet another message. And here we go again. We're, in effect, offering some taxation without representation. You can argue that this is no new net to the individual citizen of the state of California as they go up to the pump, but it sure does violate the promise that we're not going to compromise funding the transit local government. And I don't understand why the transit authorities are neutral on this, other than that they're getting some money as a part of the deal. By the way, these two bills, this one and the next one, were bifurcated. They had been formerly all in one bill. And I think it's most egregious that there's provisions in here, if the federal government reduces their excise tax, then the Board of Equalization here will make a determination and make up the difference. So what had been a shared burden will now become state-only burden. And the state will be obliged under the provisions of this bill to fully fund. Now, if I was a representative in Congress and looking for more money or ways to deal with my budget, what a great mechanism the state of California has now afforded me. We can keep our money and use it for our pork barrel or whatever, and let California suffer. The bureaucracy of the state will make decisions and computations that will impose a tax burden on the citizens of California, as I've noted, and nobody gets to vote. There is no accountability for these individuals at the Board of Equalization. Again, this is not how we ought to do government. I would urge a no vote, and let us, as California, finally keep our promise to our local governments.
Thank you, Mr. Nielsen. Mr. DeVore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. Let's be clear about what's happening here with this bill. In 2002, the voters of the state of California approved Proposition 42 because they were tired of their elected representatives raiding transportation funds, funds paid into the highest gas tax in America, funds that were supposed to be dedicated to road construction and repair and mass transit. They were tired of us constantly raiding those funds. So they passed Prop 42. Well, then the legislature continued to figure out ways around Prop 42, and so in 2006, the people of the state of California approved Proposition 1A, which sought to further improve the guarantees that money dedicated to transportation would actually go to transportation. So now, because we don't like that, what this bill proposes to do is to essentially defund Prop 42 and Prop 1A by eliminating the sales tax on gasoline and then replacing it with a 17.3 cent excise tax, 17.3 cents per gallon. Now, by indulging or engaging in this legislative legerdemain, we've managed to defund the will of the people as expressed in Prop 42 and Prop 1A. And now, in the state of California, a state with road maintenance quality continuing to go down, a state with tremendous pressure on local transit districts, we have now opened the door to increasing that pressure. There is no substitute for getting our economic house in order. 4 years ago, during the deliberation of the budget, I explicitly warned this body that slow times were coming and we needed to pull back on our spending, but we went ahead and spent more anyway. Now we're dealing with the practical consequences of our profligate spending, our spendthrift waves. And so I would urge a no vote. We need to continue to funnel the money that is expected by the voters to go to transportation. This measure, if passed, will end up having dire consequences on the future of California as far as our maintaining our transportation system. And as such, I think that this measure is ill-considered and does not deserve our support this morning.
Thank you, Mr. DeVore. Mr. Eng.
Members, I don't know if you've ever taken a bus before, but I know many of you have, and many of our constituents have taken a bus. I know I did when I grew up, and I had to walk 2 miles just to get to the bus stop. But if you ask the average bus rider, what is the one thing that they want? They don't necessarily care that the bus is beautiful and well painted. They don't even care that sometimes it may take a little longer to get to their destination. But the one thing that bus riders want is certainty. That if they're out there waiting in the rain for the bus to come, that it will come. Members of this esteemed body, Prop 42 is the bus that never came. It's the bus that held out the promise of coming. But for transit takers, transit operators, and local government that depend on transit operations, Prop 42 never came. Members, AB 6 is the bus that will come and continue to come. And in coming, it solves two problems. Number one, it gives certainty to transit operations. And number two, it gives general fund relief. And for these reasons, we cannot afford to let transit sit out there in the cold and wait for the bus that never comes. And finally, let me give you this fact. In a declining economy with high unemployment rates and the need for local governments to get that shot in the arm, $1 invested in transit translates to $6 to our locals in terms of economic impact. And that's a bus that you can take all the way to the bank. Please support AB 6.
Thank you, Mr. Eng. Seeing no debate or discussion, Ms. Evans, you may close.
I don't think I can add anything to that, members. I ask for your aye vote.
Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 41, noes 30. Senate amendments are concurred in. We move now to file, or without reference to file, to AB 9. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 9 by the Assembly Committee on Budget and Act relating to transportation and making an appropriation therefore.
You may open, Ms. Evans.
Members, this is the second bill of the package that we just passed the first bill of. This bill addresses how the transportation funds are allocated. In the current year, this bill will immediately appropriate $400 million to transit. This will stop service cuts and will stop job losses. Beginning in 2011 and 12, this bill will provide $350 million ongoing funding for transit and fully fund intercity rail. Lastly, this bill creates nearly $1 billion in general fund savings by using transportation revenues to pay transportation GO bond debt payments. So again, it's a win, win, win. It's a win for transit, it's a win for the state, it's a win, actually it's a win, 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 win. Win for the general fund, and the consumer will see no difference at the pump. I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 44, noes 28. Senate amendments are concurred in. We move now to, without reference to file, to AB 14. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 14 by the Assembly Committee on Budget and Act relating to state cash resources and declaring the urgency thereof to take effect immediately.
You may open, Ms. Evans.
Members, this is the cleanup to the cash management bill, which we passed about a week ago. As you may recall, because of the urgency, we needed to move the cash management bill to the governor's office for him to sign, which he did on Tuesday. However, we recognized at the time that there were a number of concerns that were raised with that bill, and we committed to making changes to it. This is the bill that makes those changes. I'll just go through them very briefly. Community colleges will be provided hardship exemptions from deferrals later this month as necessary. K through 12 is provided very clear intent of the borrowing schedule to help them in getting loans as needed. This provides a guaranteed final payment date for the most problematic loan for K through 12 next year. It moves the request date for hardship exemptions for K through 12 back to June 1 and ensures that they can request a hardship exemption in mid-year. And it provides clarification on how the HUDA deferral will be implemented. These changes address the issues that were raised on the previous bill and again makes the changes that are necessary. And this is an urgency bill, members, and it requires a 2/3 vote. So I strongly urge your aye vote.
Seeing no discussion or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 60, noes 5 on the urgency. Ayes 60, noes 5 on the measure. Senate amendments are concurred in. Ms. Ma, for what purpose?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I request unanimous consent to refer SB 34 Padilla from the Utilities and Commerce Committee to the Water, Parks and Wildlife and Appropriations Committee.
One moment, Ms. Ma. We need to take that up during regular session. We need to make sure our business is concluded in our extraordinary session. Those re-referrals are in. Those are in order without objection. We will accept those. Clerk will note. Ms. Ma, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I request unanimous consent to refer SB 26 Pavley to the Local Government, Natural Resources, and Appropriations Committee.
Without objection, clerk will note. Members, that concludes our business in the extraordinary session. We will recess. Pardon me, Mr. Speaker. We will recess extraordinary session, return to regular session. We have a few items of business to take up in regular session. File item 1. Is pass and retain in the Senate under Senate business, but we do have file item 2, AB 347, to be presented by Mr. Block for Ms. Bass. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 347 by Assemblymember Bass, an act relating to taxation to take effect immediately, tax levy.
You may open, Mr. Block.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As you'll recall, AB 347 by Speaker Emeritus Bass, which passed off this floor at the end of January, would allow an individual or a corporate taxpayer who made a cash contribution to charitable organizations for earthquake relief efforts in Haiti between January 11, 2010 and March 1, 2010 to take a tax deduction in the 2009 tax year. The measure is back in this House on concurrence. The only amendments in the Senate added on co-authors. I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Aye 71, no 0. Senate amendments are concurred in. File items 3 to 17 are pass and retain. That takes us to file item 18 by Ms. Skinner. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 722 with amendments by Assemblymember Skinner.
Ms. Skinner, you may open.
Madam Speaker and members, the amendments before you remove the current contents of the bill and establish a 33% renewable portfolio standard by 2020. The bill will be referred to the appropriate committees, and I ask for your aye vote on the amendments.
Seeing and hearing no further discussion, clerk will open the roll. These are amendments only, members. We may take these up by a voice vote. All those in favor signify by aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. The bill is back to print, out to print, back to file. Ms. Ma, for what purpose?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I request unanimous consent to re-refer file item 18, SB 722 Steinberg, to the Rules Committee pursuant to Assembly Rule 97.
Without objection, clerk will note. Members, without objection, we will take up the item that we just did a voice vote on the amendments, file item 18. Mr. Hagman has requested that we take this up on a roll call vote. And we will rescind the action where we took this up on the voice vote and referred it to the committee. So we will take this up now. This is, again, file item 18, SB 722. We will do this now on a roll call vote. Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 41, noes 24. Senate amendments are concurred in. And pursuant to the motion by Ms. Ma, the re-referral is approved. Re-referral to the Rules Committee is approved. Members, the schedule for the coming week, we will have our Women of the Year event, our floor ceremony at 11 a.m. on Monday, March 8th. Members, we're awaiting the schedule for the coming week, but Monday at 11 a.m. will be our Women of the Year ceremony. That concludes our business on the daily file. The request to adjourn in memory will be printed in the journal. All right, members, here is our schedule for next week. On Monday, March 8th, we will do our floor session at 11 a.m. for Women of the Year ceremony. On Tuesday, March 9th, we will have check-in session. On Wednesday, March 10th, check-in session. On Thursday, March 11th, floor session at 9:30 a.m. Is there any further business to come before this House? Members, we do have some requests to adjourn in memory. Just a moment, let me check with the presenters on that. Members, without objection, we will defer the adjourn in memories to our floor section next Thursday. Seeing no further business to come before this House, a motion to adjourn is in order. Mr. Jones moves, Mr. Hagman seconds, that this House will be adjourned. All of those in favor signify by aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Quorum call is lifted. The House is adjourned.